Buckle up, Broncos country, because we're about to do some clowning on the New York Jets. Once again, Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos get the last laugh over the New York Jets as they continue to show their incompetence as an organization. The latest patsy, the latest fall guy to take the blame in New York was Joe Douglas, their general manager, who was fired today after being in that role for 6 seasons, helping build up the Jets roster to being a really strong roster overall. But this article that Diana Rossini and Zach Rosenblatt of The Athletic released today paints a very scathing picture of how the Jets' issues go much deeper than head coach, GM, or even quarterback. The Jets very clearly have an ownership problem, and it was the loss week 4 to the Denver Broncos that really had the Jets shaking in their boots and really broke them as an organization. Let's go ahead and bring in this article from Diana and Zach. And coming down here, according to sources, the day after the Jets lost to the Denver Broncos on September 29th, there was a contentious meeting at the team facility. It included Joe Douglas, Woody Johnson, the Jets owner, Vice Chairman Christopher Johnson, who's Woody's brother, and he's actually the one who hired Joe Douglas as the general manager because Woody was away from the team at the time, serving as the U.S. ambassador to the United Kingdom. Also in the meeting was team president Jaime Elahi, I'm sorry if I butcher that, and then Ira I'm not going to pronounce that, Axelrod maybe, an advisor to Woody Johnson. It also included a group of coaches, then head coach Robert Saleh, then offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett, although I think Nathaniel's still OC by title, but he had the play calling duty stripped of him not long after this game. Then defensive coordinator and now interim head coach Jeff Ulbrich and special teams coordinator Brant Boyer. The coaches had been called in to explain what happened with their units during the 10-9 home loss to the Broncos. During that meeting, Johnson suggested to the coaches that they bench Aaron Rodgers in favor of Tyrod Taylor because he felt Rodgers' performance was holding the team back. The coaches and Douglas, stunned at this suggestion, talked him out of it and convinced Johnson to stay the course, and that benching Rodgers with his pedigree 4 games into the season would not sit well with the locker room. The coaches also felt it would embarrass Rodgers. The idea of benching a future Hall of Famer sounded so absurd that one coach asked whether the owner was serious. Multiple sources from that meeting believed he was serious. I can't even, bro. Aaron Rodgers' play on the field right now is not the big issue for the New York Jets. The big issue with the New York Jets, as far as Aaron Rodgers is concerned, is all the people that Rodgers brought with him. From Nathaniel Hackett to Alan Lazard to all the other personnel pieces that Rodgers insisted that the Jets bring in. But it runs a lot deeper than that. Joe Douglas, this article continues, was basically stripped of all of his power as a GM going into this offseason, and Woody Johnson just continued to meddle and meddle and meddle. He ended up interfering with what the Jets wanted to do in free agency. He basically forced them to sign Mike Williams and Tyron Smith in the second wave of free agency, and neither of those signings worked out for the Jets. Tyron Smith has been one of the worst starting tackles in football. He's out with a neck injury. He's been easily the weak link on that offensive line. And then Mike Williams is no longer on the team. He is now a Pittsburgh Steeler. Woody Johnson is an absolute joke. And this article mentions something even more interesting, I feel like. Last offseason, both Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas agreed that they needed to focus on rectifying some past mistakes they made in free agency. Specifically, they wanted to avoid aging players or ones with injury concerns. Douglas pursued a trade with the Denver Broncos for Jerry Jeudy, offering Alan Lazard and a day 2 pick. Johnson ultimately nixed it. Jeudy was instead traded to Cleveland for less than what the Jets offered, so Denver would have gotten a day 2 pick, presumably a 3rd round pick, from the New York Jets in exchange for Jerry Jeudy, along with Allen Lazard, who in my eyes would have just basically been a throwaway in that deal. The Broncos instead went in the direction of Josh Reynolds, and the Jets instead went in the direction of Mike Williams, and that move completely came back to bite them in the behind. This article continues just how Woody Johnson has his fingerprints on basically all of the moves that the Jets have made, and that they basically contradicted everything that Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas set out to do. And it was that loss to the Denver Broncos in week 4 that ultimately broke the Jets organization, and it ultimately caused Woody Johnson to go on this full-blown reign of terror. They gave him one more week after that against the Vikings out in London, and they didn't win, and that caused full-blown turmoil in that Jets organization. Robert Saleh was the first patsy that had to fall on the sword, and now Joe Douglas is the second patsy that has to fall on the sword. Don't get me wrong, there are decisions that Joe Douglas made as GM of the New York Jets that weren't great. He had some bad free agent signings. He drafted Zach Wilson number 2 overall. So at the end of the day, some of this is on Joe Douglas, but the overwhelming majority of the Jets' issues right now are on one person, and that is Woody Johnson. Woody Johnson is one of the worst owners in the NFL, and it continues to show that anytime you have an owner meddling in football operations, your organization is going to fail. Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys are another prime example of this. The Denver Broncos have an ideal structure where Greg Penner and Kerry Walton Penner, the day-to-day overseers of the Denver Broncos in terms of ownership, they've got the office in the building. They provide the financial resources. Rob Walton, he's the guy who technically signs the checks, but it's Kerry and Greg's show. They allow the football people to make football decisions. They allow George Payton and Sean Payton to be in charge of personnel. They're not involved in any of that. All they do is sign the checks. That's it. If you want to be a good owner in the NFL, then all you have to do is sign the checks, delegate the football people to do the football stuff, delegate the business people to do the business stuff, have a fancy office in the building, have a nice penthouse suite there in the stadium, and just enjoy the fruits of your labor. That is how to be an NFL owner 101. Instead, you've got these owners like Woody Johnson, like Jerry Jones, who continue to consistently meddle in their organizations and think that they're smarter than football people when making football decisions, and ultimately, this is what it led to. The New York Jets are one of the worst organizations in football perpetually, and even though they're going to clean house once again this offseason, bring in a new head coach, a new GM, and probably a new quarterback, I guarantee you that it's going to yield the exact same results. Nothing is going to change as long as Woody Johnson is the owner of the New York Jets. All right, Broncos country, be sure to leave a like on this video as well as subscribe and ring the bell. And let me know in the comment section below, guys, how do you think Sean Payton is feeling watching everything transpire with the New York Jets as the Denver Broncos are sitting here in pretty damn good position to make the playoffs? Drop those comments down below, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts as always. Be sure to leave a like on this video as well as subscribe and ring the bell so these videos appear in your notification feed. I would really appreciate it, guys. We are getting so close to 5,000 subscribers. I really believe that we can get there by the end of the week if we make a big push to get there. So if you guys have yet to subscribe to the channel, I would really appreciate it. It's free, it's easy, it only takes 1 second, and it really does help us out a ton. And until next time, guys, I'm your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.